Welcome back to Football Unspoken. Rob, Liverpool have a problem at the moment. They got three big players whose contracts are about to expire. Can you tell me who those three players are?
It's obviously Trent. It's obviously Salah, and it's Big Verge. I don't think Big Verge is signed yet, has he?
No, so there's rumors, obviously, of who's every week one of them's about to sign, basically, whether that's for Liverpool or elsewhere. Everyone's about to sign everywhere, basically, at the same time. But looking at how Liverpool are dominating the Premier League this year, and they're doing pretty well in Europe as well, does it make it difficult for those three players to not re-sign if Liverpool win the Premier League?
I don't know. I think there's going to be a lot. So I think it depends on the players. I think Virgil van Dijk is one of those for me. I think it probably makes it quite difficult for him because he's getting up there in age as a centre back. I don't think he's going to be going to anyone like really major. He might get a Bayern Munich, but he's not going to be going to a Real Madrid. He's not going to be going to. He wouldn't go to anyone else in the Premier League. I'd like to think as well. I hope he's not going to be one of those players. Um, so maybe for him, I think for Trent, it's interesting because obviously it's his boyhood club. But there's also comes a point where it's like, do you keep staying at your boyhood club or do you give the Galacticos a chance? Real Madrid does have the biggest pull in the world at the end of the day. People can argue all they want. Most people will take Real Madrid over any other club in the world. And then Salah, I think, is going to be mostly about his treatment, I would potentially say, but as well as just how homesick he is. I think how much does he want to go back to North African area? How much does he want to go back to that Middle East and North Africa, Saudi, Egypt, that kind of area? Because he could extend, but I couldn't see it being for a very long time. And I also think once you add Salah and Verge, I think for me is one of those where once you're at that age, you've won all that you've won already. How much more is winning that important to you compared to potentially earning stupid money for a year and a half in Saudi? So I think Virgil, I think it'll be a big impact. I think the other two, I'm not convinced on.
So I was thinking about this from the perspective, if you look at the beginning of the season, people were debating whether Liverpool would even make a Champions League place, new team, or not a new team, a new manager, and how they didn't really do that well the season before, etc., etc. And so it almost felt like, okay, cool, we'll just, do one more year quickly. We'll come fourth or fifth or sixth or something like that. Then we can quickly say, oh, well, we're leaving now because the team needs a rebuild, so we're going to leave. Suddenly they've won the league and maybe even a Champions League, let's say. And this is where I'm saying they can't then turn around and be like, oh, the team needs a rebuild, so we need to leave. It's almost like, no, we want you to stay. We can pay you the money. You need to stay now. And it becomes a bit awkward for them to say no to that. It's like you've just won the Premier League, which is worth more to Liverpool fans than the Champions League, just because historically they've won it less times. And like I said, they're in the situation now where they can't really say no. They can legally. I'm just saying that you don't really want to say no. And that got me thinking about, do you think it actually increases the chances that two out of three or three out of three of them re-sign if they win a trophy? Or do you think it's a case of when they win the league, it's leave on a high and actually there's more chance of all of them leaving?
Well, before we move on, I just want to say Liverpool have won the league a lot of times before you get a bollocking from Liverpool fans. But obviously, winning a Premier League, I think now would make them the most title-winning team, wouldn't it? I think that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So, uh, yeah, I still don't know. I just think that yeah, I think from a Liverpool perspective, they're probably sitting there going like, no, we can't let them go, especially Salah, because I don't think they're winning anything without Salah this year. Salah's been on an entirely separate level. But there's also a part of me that sits there and I'm going, if they were prepared to give Salah what he wanted, what he would have signed 6 months ago. Let's be honest. Yeah, I mean he's having his best one of, if not his best season. And he's absolutely smashing it. And I can't imagine that Liverpool are sitting there going, "We're not going to give you everything you want," and him not signing still. So I think this is why I said with Salah, it feels like it's going to be about the treatment of him. Are they going to give him exactly what he wants? Is he going to be able to sign a contract that he's 100% happy with? Because that's the only way you're going to get him to stay. I think he's past the point of I would say not necessarily caring, but he's past the point of this is the be all and end all of my career, winning trophies and being a cult hero. When I can go earn £1.5 million a week in Saudi. I think Trent is a different example. I think Trent, if they do win it, because he's a Liverpool lad, you always want to think that he'll stay with the home, become the hometown hero. Right? But I just think it depends on who's genuinely after him. Because also, you got to remember, if they do win the Premier League and they do win the Champions League, then Real Madrid, they love winning a Champions League. They will want Champions League winners in their squad, and they will go for Trent Alexander-Arnold hard. And is Trent a player who can ignore Real Madrid? I'm not convinced, because again, I sit there and I'm like, if he was, he would have done it 6 months ago. I think the only one that I would say is almost a bang on certainty would be Virgil van Dijk. I think if they win and Virgil gets a half decent contract offer, I think he stays. I think he likes it. He likes winning. He's still in that period of his career where he's happy to continue pushing with Liverpool. The other two, I'm just not convinced.
Normally, or in the past, when you've got these players who try to run down their contract and you have a whole contract saga, when they do finally re-sign at this and stay at the same club, from my experience, their performances always seem to drop after that. You look at Rashford at Manchester United, you look at Aubameyang at Arsenal. Now, these are all forward players, so maybe that's pertinent to Salah, but just I can't think of any examples where players run down the contract right down to the final few months, re-signed on the huge wage, and then continue to perform. I don't know if you can.
I'm sure there'll be one or two. I reckon there'll be like a Roy Keane, one of those rogue ones who's just angry all the time, so it doesn't matter about the contract. But I do think that, yeah, I do tend to agree with you. I think a lot of players like to put themselves on show. I mean, you can see it. I'll use Newcastle as an example, but years ago when Newcastle had their French Revolution and we had Yohan Cabaye and Sissoko and all they always seemed to, Sissoko specifically, loved to play against top six teams, and so did like Gini Wijnaldum. They loved playing against top six teams, and they put in major performances because it kind of put them on show. But they weren't too interested. It sounds harsh to say, but it felt like they weren't too interested when we played the bottom half teams, really. And I feel like it's a bit of a similar situation. When you're running down a contract, you're in a situation where you're thinking, oh, yeah, if I put on a really good show, I could get a Real Madrid in for me. I could get a big team in for me. So it might push them a bit further, but it'd be interesting to see if they sign a contract now. Does Salah fall off a cliff? Who knows? So
Yeah.
it is definitely a possibility.
Yeah. Anyway, there's been an interesting discussion around Liverpool's contract situation with their three big stars. We'll obviously keep tabs on that. If you guys have any opinions about are they realistically going to keep hold of 1, 2, or 3 of those players, I'd love to hear who you think they'll keep hold of and why. And until next time, this has been Football Unspoken. Cheers.